That morning,
You
London
seem
woke to
troubled.
whispers. The vampire king had returned.
Young, tell
3
us.
years. 3 years of silence. 3 years of war in distant lands where blood ran black and the moon never set. 3 years of waiting, wondering, fearing he would never come home at all. But Valerian Ashcroft had returned. The news spread like fire through the ancient city. In the vampire courts, in the shadowed salons, in the elegant drawing rooms where immortals gathered to pretend the war had not touched them. By noon, everyone knew. By evening, everyone was talking. Valerian Ashcroft, the vampire king, home. And in one corner of London, in a modest house on a quiet street, a young woman heard the news and went very still. Valerian stood at the window of his estate and looked out at the city he had left behind. London had not changed. The same gray sky, the same stone buildings stretching toward the horizon, the same streets winding through the old quarters like veins through pale skin. Everything exactly as he remembered. And yet nothing felt the same. He had left 3 years ago as one man. He returned as another. The war had done that. The blood wars always did. They took something from you, something you could never get back. Valerian closed his eyes. He could still hear it. The sound of steel on steel, the screams of the dying, the silence that came after heavier than any noise. He could still smell it, blood and ash and the bitter smoke of pyres that burned for days. He opened his eyes. London stretched before him gray and quiet and utterly foreign. He felt nothing. That was the strangest part. He had thought in the camps in the long nights when sleep would not come that returning home would bring relief. Joy, perhaps, or at least satisfaction that the war was over, that he had survived. But standing here now, looking out at the city he had fought to protect, Valerian felt only emptiness, a hollow space where something used to be. The door opened behind him. His attendant Marcus entered with a bow. "Your Grace, the Winslow family has sent word. They request the honor of your presence this afternoon." Valerian did not turn from the window. "The Winslow family." "Yes, Your Grace. Lord Winslow wishes to welcome you home personally." Valerian was quiet for a long moment. The Winslow family. Of course. He had known this visit would come, had known he would have to face them eventually. Face her. "Tell them I will come," he said. Marcus bowed and left. Valerian remained at the window. His reflection stared back at him from the glass, pale, unchanged. 3 years had passed, but vampires did not age. He looked exactly as he had the day he left. Except for the eyes. The eyes were different now, colder, harder. They had seen too much. They trusted nothing. He turned away from the window. This afternoon, then, he would go to the Winslow house. He would see them again, see the family he had left behind, see the woman who had been his fiancée, Celestine. He waited to feel something at the thought of her name, anticipation, longing, even pain. Nothing came, just that same hollow emptiness. Valerian straightened his coat and walked toward the door. The Winslow house looked exactly as he remembered. Modest, elegant, tucked away on a quiet street where old money lived without needing to announce itself. The kind of house that spoke of dignity, of tradition, of families that had been part of vampire society for generations. Valerian stood before the door and paused. 3 years ago, he had walked through this door as an engaged man, as someone with a future planned a life waiting. He had said goodbye to Celestine on these steps, had promised to return, had meant it. Now he stood here again, and everything had changed. He knocked. The door opened immediately. A servant, an older vampire Valerian recognized, bowed low. "Your Grace, welcome. Lord Winslow is expecting you." Valerian stepped inside. The house smelled of beeswax and old wood, and something faintly floral he could not name. Everything was polished, orderly, proper, as it always had been. He was led to the drawing room. Lord Winslow stood when Valerian entered. A tall man, gray-haired with the bearing of old aristocracy. He smiled, but there was something careful in it, something guarded. "Your Grace, Valerian, welcome home." They shook hands. Lord Winslow's grip was firm, formal. "Thank you, sir. It is good to be home." The lie came easily. Valerian had learned many things in the war. How to lie was one of them. "Please sit. We have tea prepared. My wife will join us shortly." Valerian sat. The chair was comfortable. The room warm. A fire burned in the fireplace, though vampires did not need warmth. It was for appearance, for humanity. "The war," Lord Winslow began, then paused. "We heard it was difficult." "It was." Valerian's voice came out flat. He had not meant it to, but he could not help it. Every question about the war sounded the same. Every answer felt meaningless. Lord Winslow nodded slowly. He seemed to understand that this was not a topic to pursue. Lady Winslow entered then. She was elegant, composed, her silver hair pinned perfectly. She smiled at Valerian, but her eyes held the same careful guard as her husband's. "Your Grace, how wonderful to see you safely returned." Valerian stood bowed. "Lady Winslow, you are very kind." She sat across from him. A servant brought tea. Valerian accepted a cup he would not drink. The conversation began. Polite, surface level. How was the journey back? Was he settling in well? Had he heard the latest news from the council? Valerian answered. Short responses. Enough to be courteous, not enough to invite deeper questions. And all the while he waited for her to appear. Celestine, his fiancée. Where was she finally after 10 minutes of careful pleasantries? Valerian could wait no longer. "Lady Winslow," he said quietly, "where is Celestine?" The room went still. Lady Winslow and Lord Winslow exchanged a glance. Something passed between them. Something heavy. Lord Winslow cleared his throat. Lady Winslow set down her teacup. Valerian felt something shift in his chest. Not quite alarm, but close. "Valerian," Lord Winslow began. His voice was gentle. Too gentle. She is no longer living here." Valerian waited. "She married 2 years ago," Lady Winslow said softly, "to Lord Theron Ravencroft." Silence. Complete silence. Valerian sat perfectly still. His hands rested on his knees. His face showed nothing. But inside something flickered. Not pain, not heartbreak. Something stranger. Surprise, perhaps, that she had not waited. That 3 years had been too long. And beneath that something he could not name. Relief, no. That could not be right. He looked down at his hands. They were steady, completely steady. "I see," he said. His voice was calm, flat, as if they had told him the weather. Lady Winslow leaned forward slightly. "Valerian, we did not know when you would return. The war, there was no word, no letters. We thought—" She did not finish. She did not need to. They had thought he was dead, or at least not coming back. "I understand," Valerian said. And he did. He understood completely. 3 years was a long time, even for vampires, especially when there was no word, no promise of return. Celestine had made a choice, a practical choice, a smart choice. He could not fault her for it. "Is she well?" he asked. "Yes," Lord Winslow said quickly. "She is well. The marriage is suitable." Suitable, not happy, but suitable. Valerian nodded slowly. The conversation had stalled. Everyone could feel it. The weight of what had just been said hung in the air like smoke. Then the door opened. A young woman entered. She carried a tray with fresh tea. She was slender, dressed simply in a gray dress. Her hair was dark brown, pulled back loosely. Her eyes were light, gray-green like rain. She looked up as she entered, saw Valerian and stopped. Just for a second. Just a heartbeat. Then she continued forward, set the tray down on the table and stepped back. "Thank you, Isolde," Lady Winslow said. Isolde, the younger daughter, Celestine's sister. Valerian had seen her before, of course. 3 years ago, before he left. She had been there at the farewells, quiet, standing to the side. He remembered her vaguely, a shadow beside her brighter, more beautiful sister. He had barely noticed her then, but now looking at her he could not say what it was. She stood near the wall, hands folded in front of her. She did not look at him. She looked at the floor, at the wall, anywhere but at him. "Miss Isolde," Valerian said. His voice sounded different, less flat, almost— No, he was imagining it. Isolde's eyes lifted, met his for just a second. Pale eyes, thoughtful, seeing. "Your Grace," she said softly. "Welcome home." Her voice was quiet, gentle. It did not demand attention. It simply existed. Valerian found himself staring. Then Isolde lowered her gaze again and stepped back toward the door. "Isolde, please stay," Lady Winslow said. "Join us." Isolde hesitated. For just a moment she looked like she might refuse. Then she nodded and sat in the chair nearest the wall, the farthest from Valerian. The conversation resumed. Lord Winslow asked about the estate. Lady Winslow mentioned some upcoming social events. Valerian answered when required, but his attention kept drifting. To the girl in the gray dress sitting quietly in the corner. She did not speak. She did not draw attention to herself. She simply sat there, hands folded in her lap, eyes downcast. And yet Valerian could not stop noticing her. The way she breathed, slow, steady, calm. The way her fingers occasionally tightened against each other, then relaxed. The way she looked up once, just once, and her eyes found his before darting away. What was it about her? He could not say. The visit did not last long. Valerian stood to leave after 20 minutes. It was enough. More than enough. Lord and Lady Winslow walked him to the door. Polite farewells, invitations to return any time, assurances that he was always welcome. Valerian accepted them all with the appropriate words. As he reached the door, he turned. Isolde stood in the hallway behind her parents, still quiet, still watching. Their eyes met. 1 second, two. Then Valerian turned and left. That night, alone in his estate, Valerian sat in the dark. He did not light the candles. He did not need light. Vampires could see in the dark. He sat in his chair and stared at nothing. Celestine was married. He turned the thought over in his mind, examined it, waited for the pain to come. It did not. He felt nothing. That should have troubled him. Should have told him something was deeply wrong. He had been engaged to Celestine. He had left her with promises of return. He had carried the thought of her through the war. Or had he, Valerian, closed his eyes and tried to remember the war, the long nights in the camps, the moments before sleep when thoughts turned to home? What had he thought about? He had thought about London, about his estate, about the life he had left behind. But Celestine, her face, her voice, he could not remember, not clearly, not the way he should have been able to. That realization settled over him like cold water. He had not loved her. Perhaps he never had. Or if he had, it had been a shallow thing, a surface thing, the kind of love that looked right from the outside but held no depth beneath. And when the war came, when real darkness came, that shallow love had not survived. Valerian opened his eyes. He stared into the shadows of his room and felt that same emptiness he had felt since returning. Celestine was married. She had moved on. She had chosen life over waiting. And Valerian felt nothing, except a face appeared in his mind. Pale eyes, quiet hands folded in a lap, a soft voice saying, "Welcome home." Isolde. Valerian frowned. Why was he thinking of her? He barely knew her, had barely spoken to her. She was just Celestine's younger sister, the quiet one, the one who stood in the background, and yet her face lingered in his mind when her sisters did not. Valerian stood and walked to the window. London spread below him, dark, sleeping, unchanged. He rested his hand against the glass. Tomorrow there would be social obligations, people to see, gatherings to attend. The Vampire King was expected to be seen to reassure society that he had returned, that the war was over, that life could continue as before. Valerian dreaded it, but he would go because that was what was expected. He closed his eyes and saw a pale eye staring back. The first gathering was 3 days later. Lord and Lady Harrington were hosting a large event. Everyone who mattered in vampire society would be there, including Valerian knew the Winslow family. He arrived late, deliberately. He had learned that arriving late meant fewer questions. People had already settled into their conversations. They were less likely to swarm him immediately. The Harrington estate was magnificent, grand, all crystal and candlelight and carefully arranged opulence. Music drifted from somewhere deeper in the house. Laughter, the sound of glasses clinking. Valerian stepped inside and immediately wanted to leave. Too many people, too much noise, too much life pretending to be carefree when the war was barely over. But he stayed because he had to. A servant offered him wine. He accepted it, held it, did not drink. He moved through the room slowly. People noticed him. Of course they did. The Vampire King had returned. Everyone wanted to see him, speak with him, touch the legend. A nobleman approached. Valerian recognized him vaguely. Lord something. He could not remember. Your Grace, wonderful to see you. Tell me the war. What was it truly like? Valerian's jaw tightened. It was difficult, he said. Yes, of course, but the victory. We won, didn't we? That's what matters. The man smiled. Bright, ignorant. Valerian looked at him and felt something dark stir in his chest. Excuse me, he said quietly and walked away. He found a corner, a place where the crowd thinned. He stood with his back to the wall and watched. All these people, laughing, drinking, dancing, as if nothing had happened, as if the world had not just burned. Did they know? Did they understand what the war had cost? No, they did not, and they did not want to. Valerian's eyes scanned the room, looking for an escape. A door, a hallway, anywhere away from this. Then he saw her, Isolde. She stood near the windows, alone. She wore a dress of deep blue, simple, elegant. Her hair was pulled back, revealing the pale line of her neck. She was not speaking to anyone, not laughing, not drinking. She was simply standing, looking out the window at the dark garden beyond. Valerian found himself staring. There was something about her, something that pulled at him. He could not name it, could not explain it, but it was there. As if she felt his gaze, Isolde turned. Their eyes met across the room. 1 second, two, three. Then someone stepped between them. A noble woman in red, laughing loudly. The moment broke. Valerian looked away, but the image of her stayed. Dinner was announced. The guests moved toward the dining hall. A massive room, a table that stretched the length of it. Valerian was seated near the center, position of honor, exactly where he did not want to be. The seats filled around him, nobles, diplomats, the important people of vampire society. And across from him, by chance or design, Isolde Winslow sat down. She did not look at him. She settled into her seat, arranged her napkin, and kept her eyes on the table. Valerian watched her from the corner of his vision. She was quiet. Even in the noise of conversation around them, she was utterly quiet. She did not try to draw attention, did not laugh loudly or speak over others. She simply existed in her small space, calm and composed. The meal began, courses were brought, wine was poured. The nobleman beside Valerian leaned over. "Your Grace, I must ask, the war, what was it really like? The newspapers say one thing, but you know the truth." Valerian's hand tightened around his fork. "It was difficult," he said again. "But the battles, the glory you led men into, there is no glory in war." Valerian's voice came out harder than he intended, sharp. The nobleman blinked, pulled back slightly. An awkward silence fell around them. Valerian set down his fork. He could feel it building, that pressure behind his eyes, that weight in his chest. The walls of the room seemed to press closer. Too many people, too many voices, and too many questions. He needed to leave. Now. Then across the table a voice spoke. Quiet, clear. "Are you all right?" Valerian's head snapped up. Everyone at the table turned. Isolde had spoken. She sat across from him, her hands folded on the table, her eyes fixed on his face. Not, "How was the war?" Not, "Tell us about the battles." Just, "Are you all right?" The question hung in the air. Simple, direct, human. Valerian stared at her. She looked back. Her expression was calm, not pitying, not curious, just concerned. As if she saw him. Not the vampire king, not the war hero, just him, the man beneath all of it. And something in Valerian's chest cracked. Just slightly, just enough to hurt. "I am all right," he said quietly. Isolde held his gaze for one more second. Then she nodded slightly and returned to her meal. The conversation around them resumed. The moment passed, but Valerian could not stop looking at her. That question, simple, honest. No one had asked him that, not since he returned. Everyone asked about the war, about the battles, about victory and glory and honor. No one asked if he was all right, except her. This girl who barely spoke, who stood in corners and watched the world from a distance. She had asked. And for the first time since returning home, Valerian felt something other than emptiness. He did not know what it was yet, but it was there. Small, fragile, real. After dinner, the guests moved to the ballroom. Music played, couples danced. Valerian did not dance. He stood near the edge of the room and watched. Isolde was there, still alone. She sat in a chair near the wall speaking with an elderly woman. But Valerian noticed her eyes. They were somewhere else. Distant, thoughtful. He found himself walking toward her without deciding to. The elderly woman noticed him first. Her eyes widened. She rose quickly, bowed. "Your Grace." Isolde looked up, surprised. Valerian inclined his head to the elderly woman. "Forgive the interruption." "Not at all, Your Grace, not at all." The woman practically fled. Valerian looked down at Isolde. She had risen from her chair. She stood before him, hands clasped in front of her eyes, uncertain. "Miss Isolde," he said, "Your Grace." Silence. He did not know what he had come over here to say. He had not planned this. "Thank you," he said finally. Isolde's brow furrowed slightly. For what? For asking. She understood immediately. He could see it in her eyes. "Of course," she said softly. "Anyone would." "No," Valerian said. "They would not. They do not." Isolde looked at him for a long moment, searching his face. Then she nodded, just slightly. "Would you like to leave?" she asked quietly. The question surprised him. "Leave it. Assembly, the gathering. It's very loud, very crowded. If you would like to leave, no one would fault you. You have already been seen. That is enough. Valerian stared at her. How did she know? How did she see so clearly what he needed? The library, Isolde said. It will be empty, quieter. She was offering him an escape, a way out without making it seem like retreat. Valerian found himself nodding. Show me. The library was on the second floor, down a quiet hallway, away from the music and laughter and noise. Isolde led him there without speaking. She opened the door, gestured inside. Valerian entered. Silence. Blessed, complete silence. The library was large. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling. A fire burned in the hearth. 2 chairs sat near the windows. Valerian walked to the window and looked out. The garden spread below. Dark. Peaceful. Empty. He closed his eyes and breathed. For the first time all evening, the pressure in his chest eased. Behind him, he heard the door close softly. He turned. Isolde stood just inside the room. She looked uncertain, as if she might leave. Stay, Valerian said. The word came out before he could stop it. Isolde paused. I don't want to disturb you. You are not. She hesitated a moment longer. Then she nodded and crossed to one of the chairs by the fire. She sat down, smoothed her dress, and folded her hands in her lap. Valerian watched her. She did not look at him. She looked at the fire, at the books on the shelves, anywhere but at him. He turned back to the window. Minutes passed. Neither of them spoke. But the silence was not uncomfortable. It was not heavy or strained. It was simply there. A quiet space where nothing was demanded, nothing was expected. Valerian found himself relaxing, truly relaxing, for the first time since returning home. This girl, she asked for nothing. She demanded nothing. She simply sat in her chair and existed beside him. And it was enough, more than enough. After 10 minutes, Valerian spoke. Do you come to many of these gatherings? Isolde looked up, surprised that he had spoken. A few, she said, when my mother insists. You do not enjoy them. It was not a question. Isolde smiled, small, sad. No, not particularly. Why? She considered the question, really considered it. She did not answer quickly or carelessly. Because they are loud, she said finally, and crowded, and everyone is always performing, always pretending to be something they are not. Valerian turned from the window. He looked at her fully. And you do not like to pretend? No, Isolde said quietly. I do not. Silence again. Valerian crossed to the other chair. He sat down. Isolde watched him from the corner of her eye, uncertain, as if she expected him to say something more, to ask more questions. But Valerian did not speak. He simply sat, and together they remained in that quiet library, the fire crackling softly, the distant music muffled by walls and doors. 2 people who did not want to be at the gathering. 2 people who had escaped to the same place. After 15 minutes, Isolde reached for a book on the side table. She opened it, began to read. Valerian watched her, the way the firelight played across her face, the way her eyes moved across the page, the way her lips moved slightly with the words as if she were speaking them silently to herself. He did not know how long he sat there, watching her, feeling something he could not name settle in his chest. Eventually he spoke again. Have you been at home for 3 years? Isolde looked up, startled. The question was personal, perhaps too personal. But Valerian had asked it anyway. Yes, she said. Why? Isolde closed the book slowly. She set it in her lap. Her fingers traced the cover. Because I did not want to go anywhere, she said. There must have been invitations, offers. There were. Then why did you not accept them? Isolde looked at him, really looked at him, her eyes clear and steady. Because I had no reason to go, she said, and going without a reason, just going for the sake of going, has always felt empty to me. Valerian stared at her. That answer, that honest, thoughtful answer, it was not what he had expected. It was not a practiced society response. It was real. I understand, he said, and he did. He understood completely. Isolde held his gaze for another moment. Then she looked back down at her book, but she did not open it again. They sat in silence until the clock struck 11. Then Isolde rose. I should return. My mother will wonder where I went. Valerian stood as well. They walked to the door together. Isolde reached for the handle, then paused. Your Grace, she said quietly, if you need a quiet place again, at any gathering, you may always find me. I am usually in a corner somewhere. She smiled, small, gentle. Then she opened the door and left. Valerian stood alone in the library. His hand rested on the back of the chair where she had sat. And for the first time since returning from the war, he felt something warm in the hollow space of his chest. Not much, not yet, but something. Over the following weeks, Valerian attended more gatherings, obligatory appearances. Society demanded them, and at each one he found himself searching, not consciously, not deliberately, but searching nonetheless, for a gray dress, for dark brown hair pulled back simply, for someone standing by the windows. He told himself it was nothing, that he was simply looking for a familiar face in the sea of strangers. But he knew it was more than that. At each gathering he would find her, always in a corner, always by a window, always alone, and they would talk, brief conversations, simple exchanges about books or weather or nothing at all. But in those moments, the weight on Valerian's chest would ease. The world would feel less heavy, the emptiness less vast. One evening at Lord Pemberton's gathering, Valerian stood near the refreshment table and scanned the room. There, by the windows again, always by the windows. Isolde stood alone looking out at the night. Valerian crossed the room. She turned as he approached. Her eyes widened slightly. "Your Grace." "Miss Isolde." He gestured to the windows, escaping again. A small smile touched her lips. "Always. May I join you?" Of course, they stood side by side looking out at the dark garden. Music drifted from the ballroom behind them. Laughter, conversation, the noise of life. But here by the windows it was quieter. "You always stand near windows," Valerian observed. Isolde glanced at him. "And you always arrive late and leave early." He almost smiled. Almost. "We are both very good at escaping," he said. "Oh, yes," Isolde agreed. "We are." They fell into silence again. That same comfortable silence from the library. Valerian found himself relaxing. The tension in his shoulders eased. The pressure behind his eyes faded. This girl, she made the noise bearable. After a few minutes, Isolde spoke. "May I ask you something?" "Of course. Have you always been like this?" Valerian frowned. "Like what?" "The kind of person who escapes from crowds." Valerian considered the question. Truly considered it. "No," he said finally. "Before the war I was not. And now I am." Isolde nodded, as if she understood. She did not ask why, did not push for details, did not demand he explain himself. She simply heard him. Valerian looked at her, really looked at her. At the quiet strength in her face, at the way she stood so still, so calm even in the chaos of the gathering. "And you," he asked, "have you always been like this?" Isolde smiled, mild, gentle. "Yes," she said, "I think so." They stood together until the music changed, until Lady Pemberton announced the next dance. Then Isolde turned to him. "I should return to my mother. She will worry." Valerian nodded. Isolde began to walk away. Then she paused, looked back. "Your Grace, there is another gathering next week, at the Ashford estate. It will be very large, very loud. I have heard. There is a garden on the east side. Very few people go there. It is quiet." Valerian met her eyes. Understanding passed between them. "Thank you," he said. Isolde smiled once more. Then she disappeared into the crowd. Valerian remained by the window, alone again, but the emptiness in his chest was smaller now. That night, Valerian returned to his estate and sat in his study. He tried to read, could not focus. He tried to work on correspondence, could not concentrate. His mind kept returning to one thing, a quiet voice, hands folded calmly in a lap. A woman who stood by windows and read books in libraries and did not pretend to be anything other than what she was. Isolde. Valerian stood and paced to the window. Why did he keep thinking of her? She was just Celestine's younger sister, the one who stood in the background. And yet, when Valerian thought of the Winslow house now, he did not think of Celestine. He thought of Isolde, of that moment at dinner when she asked if he was all right, of the library where they sat in silence, of the windows where they stood together escaping the same night. Valerian pressed his hand against the glass. He barely knew her, had barely spoken to her beyond those few conversations. But somehow she had become the one person in all of London who did not exhaust him. The one person who asked for nothing. The one person who simply was. Valerian closed his eyes. He told himself it was nothing. That he was simply grateful to have found someone who understood the need for quiet, for escape, for silence. That was all. Nothing more. But even as he thought it, he knew it was a lie. Because when he pictured her face, when he remembered the way she looked at him with those clear eyes, something in his chest tightened. Something warm. Something fragile. something dangerous. The next morning, a servant brought news. The Winslow family had sent an invitation, a small dinner, family only. They hoped the vampire king would honor them with his presence. Valerian held the card in his hand. He should refuse. He had already visited once. There was no obligation to return so soon. But even as he thought it, he knew he would accept. Because the Winslow house meant seeing her again. Isolde. Send word that I will attend, Valerian said. The servant bowed and left. Valerian sat alone in his study and stared at the invitation. What was he doing? He did not know, but he could not seem to stop. 3 days later, Valerian arrived at the Winslow house at precisely 7 in the evening. He was shown to the dining room, smaller than the drawing room, more intimate. 4 people sat at the table. Lord Winslow, Lady Winslow, and Isolde. No Celestine, of course not. She was married now, living elsewhere. It was just the 4 of them. Valerian greeted Lord and Lady Winslow, took his seat across from Isolde. She looked up as he sat. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, unspoken, unnameable. Then Isolde looked away. Dinner began. The conversation was polite. Careful, Lord and Lady Winslow spoke of society matters, of upcoming events, of weather and politics, and nothing of substance. Valerian responded when appropriate, but his attention kept drifting to the girl across from him, who ate quietly, who spoke only when spoken to, who seemed content to exist in the background. Halfway through the meal, Lord and Lady Winslow began discussing something between themselves. A matter of household business. Valerian took the opportunity. He leaned forward slightly, spoke quietly. Did you finish that book? Isolde looked up, surprised. Which book? The one in the library, that evening. Understanding dawned in her eyes. No, she said. I stopped halfway through. Was it good? I am still in the middle of it. It is too early to say. Valerian found himself almost smiling. A fair answer. Isolde's lips curved, just slightly. They returned to their meals, but Valerian felt something shift. That small exchange, that tiny moment of connection, it meant something. He did not know what yet, but it meant something. After dinner, Lady Winslow offered to show Valerian a new painting they had acquired. Lord Winslow joined them. Isolde remained in the dining room. Valerian followed the Winslows to the drawing room, looked at the painting, made appropriate comments, but his mind was elsewhere, in the dining room, with a girl in a gray dress. After 15 minutes, he made his excuses. Thank you for a lovely evening, but I should return home. Lord and Lady Winslow walked him to the door, warm farewells, invitations to return anytime. As Valerian stepped into the hallway, he glanced back. Isolde stood in the doorway of the dining room, watching. Their eyes met. 1 second, 2. Then Valerian turned and left. That night, Valerian could not sleep. He lay in his bed and stared at the ceiling. Thoughts circled, questions with no answers. Why did he keep thinking of her? Why did this girl who barely spoke affect him more than anyone else? What was it about her that made the emptiness feel less vast? He did not know, but he could not deny it anymore. Something was happening, something he had not expected, something he was not sure he wanted, but something undeniable nonetheless. Valerian closed his eyes and saw her face. The following week brought another gathering, this time at the Ashford estate, just as Isolde had mentioned. Large, crowded, exactly as she had warned. Valerian arrived and immediately felt suffocated. He moved through the rooms, accepted greetings, answered questions he did not want to answer. After 30 minutes, he could bear it no longer. He remembered what Isolde had said. The East Garden. Quiet. He found the door and slipped outside. The night air was cool. The garden stretched before him, dark and peaceful. Valerian walked away from the house, away from the lights and music and noise. He found a bench at the far end of the garden, hidden among the trees, away from everything. He sat down, breathed. For the first time all evening, the pressure eased. He closed his eyes, let the silence settle over him. Then he heard footsteps. Soft, careful. He opened his eyes. Isolde stood a few feet away. She froze when she saw him. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I didn't know you were here. Stay. The word came out before he could stop it. Again. Isolde hesitated. Then she nodded and sat on the other end of the bench. They did not speak. The garden was dark around them. The music from the house was distant, muffled. Here it was just the two of them and the night. Valerian turned his head slightly, looked at her. She sat with her hands folded in her lap. Her face was calm, peaceful. She looked like she belonged here, in the quiet, in the dark. You were right, Valerian said quietly. It was very loud in there. Isolde glanced at him. I warned you. You did. A small smile touched her lips. They fell silent again. But this time Valerian spoke first. Why did you come out here? The same reason you did, I think. To escape. Yes. Valerian studied her. This girl who always escaped to the same places he did, who sought the same silence, the same solitude. Have you always been like this? He asked. Isolde had asked him that question once. Now he returned it. Yes, she said, I think so. I have never been comfortable in crowds, never enjoyed performing. My mother says I should try harder, should be more like… She stopped, did not finish. But Valerian knew, more like Celestine, bright, beautiful, the center of attention. I prefer you as you are, Valerian said quietly. The words were out before he realized what he was saying. Isolde turned to him, her eyes wide, surprised. Valerian met her gaze. He should take it back, should explain it away. But he did not want to. As you are, he repeated. You do not need to be anyone else. Isolde stared at him. Something shifted in her expression. Something he could not read. Then she looked away. Thank you, she whispered. They sat in silence for a long time after that. And Valerian felt it again. That warmth in his chest, growing stronger, harder to ignore. He looked at this girl sitting beside him in the dark. And for the first time he let himself acknowledge what he had been denying. He wanted to know her, to understand her, to be near her, not because she was Celestine's sister, not because she was convenient or available, but because she was Isolde, and something about her called to him in a way nothing else had since the war. After they returned to the gathering, Valerian made his farewells and left. But as his carriage pulled away from the Ashford estate, he looked back and saw Isolde standing at a window, watching him leave. Their eyes met through the glass, 1 second. Then the carriage turned a corner, and she was gone. Valerian sat back in his seat. His mind was racing, his chest felt tight. What was happening to him? He had returned from the war, empty, numb, feeling nothing. But now, after a few weeks in London, after a few conversations with this girl, something had changed. He felt, not much, not yet, but something. And it terrified him. Because Isolde was Celestine's sister. Because there were lines that should not be crossed. Because he barely knew her. And yet he could not stop thinking about her. Valerian closed his eyes and saw her face. A girl who asked, "Are you all right?" A girl who stood by windows and read books and did not pretend. A girl who had been there all along. In the background, waiting, waiting. The word echoed in his mind. Waiting for what Valerian opened his eyes and stared into the darkness of the carriage. He did not know, but he intended to find out. The weeks that followed blurred together in a strange rhythm. Valerian attended gatherings because he had to, because the Vampire King was expected to be seen, to reassure society that order had returned, that life could continue. But something had changed. He no longer simply endured these events. He went looking for something, for someone. He told himself it was nothing, that he simply appreciated having one person in London who understood the need for quiet, for escape. But he knew it was more than that. Every gathering, every social event, his eyes would scan the room until he found her. Always in a corner, always by a window, always alone. Isolde. And when he found her, that hollow space in his chest would ease. Just slightly, just enough to breathe. It was the 4th week after his return when Valerian stopped pretending. Lord Winslow had invited him to tea. A simple afternoon visit, nothing formal. Valerian accepted immediately. He arrived at the Winslow house at 3, was shown to the drawing room. Lord Winslow greeted him warmly. Your Grace, thank you for coming. I hope the afternoon finds you well. Very well, thank you. They sat, tea was brought, the conversation began. Politics, the council, news from the continent. Valerian listened, responded appropriately, but his attention was elsewhere. Where was she? After 15 minutes, the door opened. Isolde entered carrying a book. She stopped when she saw Valerian. Oh, forgive me, I did not know we had company. Come in, Lord Winslow said. His Grace will not mind. Isolde hesitated, then stepped inside. She sat in the chair nearest the door, as far from Valerian as possible, but close enough that he could see her. The conversation continued. Lord Winslow spoke about upcoming council business. Valerian made appropriate comments, but he was acutely aware of every movement Isolde made. The way she folded her hands in her lap. The way she looked down at the book she held but did not open it. The way her breath came slow and steady. Calm. After 20 minutes, Lord Winslow was called away. Some household matter that required his attention. "Forgive me, Your Grace. I will return shortly." He left. Silence fell. Valerian and Isolde sat alone in the drawing room. She did not look at him. She stared at the book in her lap. Valerian watched her. The afternoon light came through the windows. It caught in her hair, turned the brown to gold at the edges. She was beautiful. He had not let himself think it before. But sitting here now alone with her, he could not deny it. Not the bright, obvious beauty of Celestine, but something quieter, deeper. The kind of beauty that did not announce itself, that waited to be discovered. "You do not have to stay," Isolde said suddenly, quietly. "If you wish to leave, I can tell my father you were called away." Valerian frowned. "Why would I wish to leave?" Isolde looked up, met his eyes for the first time. "Because I am not very good company." "Who told you that?" She smiled, sad. "No one had to tell me. I have always known." Valerian leaned forward slightly. "You are wrong." Isolde blinked, surprised. "You are the best company I have found since returning," Valerian said. And he meant it, every word. Isolde stared at him. Something shifted in her expression. Confusion, disbelief. "I do not understand," she said softly. "You do not demand. You do not perform. You do not pretend to be anything other than what you are." Valerian paused. "That is rare. Precious even." Isolde's hands tightened around the book. "You hardly know me," she whispered. "I know enough." Silence. Isolde looked away first, but Valerian saw it, the faint color rising in her cheeks, the way her breath caught just slightly. Lord Winslow returned then. The moment broke. But something had been said, something that could not be unsaid. That night, Valerian sat in his study and tried to work. He could not. His mind kept returning to the drawing room, to her eyes looking at him with confusion and something else, something he could not name. He stood, paced to the window. What was he doing? Isolde was Celestine's sister. There were boundaries, lines that should not be crossed, and yet he kept crossing them, kept seeking her out, kept finding excuses to be near her. Why? Valerian pressed his forehead against the cool glass. He had returned from the war numb, empty, feeling nothing. Celestine, his former fiancée, stirred nothing in him. Not pain, not longing, nothing. But this girl, she made him feel. Not much, not overwhelming emotion, but something. Warmth, curiosity, interest. The desire to know more, to understand, to be near her. It was small, fragile, new, but it was real. And Valerian had not felt anything real in so long. He closed his eyes. He should stop, should pull back, should respect the boundaries of propriety and family. But even as he thought it, he knew he would not. Because for the first time since the war, he wanted something. And that wanting, terrifying as it was, felt like coming back to life. The next gathering was at the Ravencroft estate. Valerian almost did not attend. Lord Theron Ravencroft, Celestine's husband. It would be awkward, uncomfortable. But Isolde would be there. The Winslow family would be invited. That decided it. Valerian arrived late as always. The Ravencroft estate was impressive. All dark wood and crystal chandeliers and carefully arranged wealth. The crowd was thick. Conversation loud. Valerian moved through the rooms, accepting greetings, avoiding extended conversations. He was looking for her. He found her in the conservatory, a glass room filled with plants, quieter than the rest of the house, fewer people. Isolde stood near a large fern, alone, looking at the greenery as if it were the most interesting thing in the world. Valerian walked over, escaping again. Isolde turned, her face registered surprise and something softer. "Always your grace." "Valerian." She blinked. "What?" "My name is Valerian. You may use it." That would not be proper." "I am giving you permission." Isolde looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Valerian," she said quietly. Hearing his name from her lips did something to his chest, tightened it, warmed it. He stepped closer. "May I ask you something?" Isolde hesitated, then nodded. "Why have you never married?" The question hung in the air between them. Too personal, too direct. He knew it even as he asked. But he needed to know. Isolde went very still, her hands clasped together in front of her. "That is a very forward question," she said softly. "I know, but I would like to know." Isolde looked away, at the plants, at the glass ceiling, anywhere but at him. "There were offers," she said finally. "A few, over the years. And I declined them." "Why, boy, silence," long, heavy. Isolde's breath came a little faster. Her fingers tightened against each other. Because I was waiting, she whispered. Valerian went completely still. For whom? Isolde closed her eyes. She did not answer. She did not need to. Valerian understood. The air between them changed, charged, heavy with what had not been said. He took a step closer. Isolde. She opened her eyes, shining with something that looked like pain. Do not ask me to say it, she whispered. Please. Valerian stared at her. This girl. She had been waiting for him. The realization crashed over him like a wave. All this time. 3 years, while he was gone. While Celestine moved on and married another. Isolde had been waiting. For him. And something in Valerian's chest cracked open. Not slowly, not gently, but all at once. He left the gathering immediately. Walked out without saying goodbye to anyone. Got into his carriage. Rode home in silence. His mind was racing. His heart pounding in a way it had not in years. She had been waiting. For 3 years, in silence. Never saying a word. He arrived at his estate. Went straight to his study. Paced. Why? Why would she wait for him? He had been engaged to her sister. He had left. Had given her no reason to hope. No promises. No indication that he saw her as anything other than Celestine's younger sister. And yet, she had waited. Valerian stopped pacing. He pressed his hands against his desk and closed his eyes. And suddenly a memory surfaced. 3 years ago, the day he left for the war. He had said goodbye to the Winslow family at their house. Had embraced Celestine. Had promised to return. He had turned to leave. Had walked down the steps toward his carriage. And at the last moment, something made him look back. At the house. At the second-floor window. And there standing in that window had been a girl. Dark hair, pale face, clear eyes, looking down at him. Not smiling, not waving, just watching. With an expression on her face that he had not understood then, but understood now. Heartbreak. Valerian's eyes flew open. The memory was so clear, so vivid. He had seen her, that day, in the window, and throughout the war in the darkest moments when sleep would not come and death felt close, a face had haunted him. He had thought it was Celestine, had told himself he was thinking of his fiancée, of home, of the life waiting for him. But now remembering that window, that face looking down at him. It had not been Celestine he carried through the war. It had been Isolde. Valerian sank into his chair. All this time, for 3 years, he had carried her face in his mind and not known it. The next morning a visitor arrived. Celestine. Valerian was not expecting her, had not seen her since learning of her marriage. But there she was, standing in his drawing room, as beautiful as ever, composed, elegant. Celestine, he said. Valerian. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. May we speak? Of course, they sat, across from each other, former fiancés who had become strangers. I heard you have been visiting my family, Celestine said. Valerian said nothing. Often. Still nothing. Celestine studied him, her blue eyes sharp, seeing more than he wanted her to see. It is Isolde, is it not? Valerian's jaw tightened. Celestine laughed, soft, sad. I thought so. Celestine, do not apologize. She held up a hand. There is nothing to apologize for. I did not come back intending... Yeah, I know. Celestine folded her hands in her lap. But it happened anyway. Silence. Valerian looked at this woman he had once thought to marry and felt nothing but a distant fondness, the ghost of something that had never truly been real. I need to tell you something, Celestine said quietly. I should have told you 3 years ago, but I was young and selfish and afraid. Valerian waited. Celestine took a breath. I always knew Isolde loved you. The words fell like stones. Valerian went very still. What? I saw it. The way she looked at you when you were not watching. The way her face changed when you entered a room. The way she went silent whenever we spoke of you. Celestine paused. I saw it, and I said nothing. Valerian stared at her. Why, because I wanted you. Celestine's voice was steady, honest. You were the vampire king. Powerful, important. Marrying you would secure my family's position, would give me status. I wanted that. She looked down at her hands. And because I thought if I pretended not to see Isolde's feelings, they would simply disappear. That she would forget. Move on. But she did not. No. Celestine looked up. Her eyes were sad. She did not. She waited. For 3 years. Never asking. Never demanding. Just waiting. Valerian felt something twist in his chest. And Yuki, he asked quietly, why did you not wait? Celestine smiled, bitter. Because I saw your face. That day you left. You looked back at the house before you went. Valerian remembered. The window, Isolde's face. You looked back, Celestine continued, and I thought you were looking at me. But you were not, were you? Valerian said nothing. Celestine nodded, as if he had confirmed it. I realized even then that you did not love me, not truly. Oh, you would have married me, would have been a good husband, but your heart was never fully mine. She stood, walked to the window. When you did not write, when months passed with no word, I knew. Either you were dead or you were not coming back to me. So you married Ravencroft? Yes, Celestine turned, and it was a mistake. But it was my choice, my consequences to bear. Valerian stood as well. I am sorry, he said, and meant it. Do not be. Celestine crossed to him, stood close, looked up at his face. Valerian, you were blind 3 years ago. You chose the wrong sister. The words hit like a blow. But you see her now, Celestine continued. Do not be blind again. She reached up, touched his face briefly, a gesture of farewell. She is worth more than I ever was. Take care of her. Then Celestine turned and left. Valerian stood alone in the drawing room, the wrong sister. He had chosen the wrong sister. The realization settled over him, heavy, undeniable. 3 years ago he had been too blind to see what was right in front of him. A girl who loved him without asking for anything in return. A girl who stood in windows and watched him leave. A girl who waited. And now, having finally seen her, having finally understood, what was he going to do? He went to the Winslow house that afternoon, unannounced, unexpected. The servant who answered looked startled. Your Grace, we were not expecting. Is Miss Isolde at home? She is in the garden, Your Grace. Show me. The servant led him through the house, out the back door, into a small, carefully tended garden. And there she was, sitting on a bench beneath a tree, a book open in her lap. The afternoon sun filtering through the leaves, dappling her in light and shadow. She looked up as he approached. Her eyes widened. Your Grace. Valerian, he corrected. He crossed to her, stood before her, looking down at this girl who had turned his world upside down without saying a word. We need to speak, he said. Isolde closed her book slowly, set it aside, folded her hands in her lap. About what? About you, about me, about the question you did not answer. Isolde went pale. Please, do not. Why did you not tell me? The question came out harder than he intended, almost angry. Isolde flinched. Tell you what? That you. Valerian stopped, breathed. That you felt something for me. Isolde's hands tightened together. Her knuckles went white. I could not, she whispered. Why not? You were Celestine's. Her voice broke slightly. There was a line I could not cross. Valerian stared at her, at the pain in her face, the guilt, the shame. You did not cross it, he said quietly. You stood behind that line for 3 years. Yes. Watching, waiting, saying nothing. Yes. Why? Isolde looked up at him. Tears shimmered in her eyes but did not fall. Because loving you was not a choice, she said, but speaking of it was. And I chose silence. The words landed in Valerian's chest like an arrow. He sank onto the bench beside her. They sat side by side, not touching, but close enough that he could feel the warmth of her. I saw you, Valerian said quietly, 3 years ago in the window, when I left. Isolde went very still. I looked back, just before I left, and you were standing there watching me. I did not think you noticed, Isolde whispered. I did, and throughout the war, in the darkest moments, a face haunted me. Valerian turned to look at her. I thought it was Celestine's. I told myself I was thinking of my fiancée, of the life I had left behind. He paused, but it was not Celestine. It was you, your face, in that window, that expression. Isolde's breath caught. I carried you through the war, Valerian said, and I did not even know it. A single tear slid down Isolde's cheek. Valerian reached out, caught it with his thumb. Gentle. Isolde closed her eyes at his touch. I wrote letters, Valerian said, in the camps, late at night when I could not sleep. I addressed them to home, never sent them, just wrote them. What did they say? That I was tired, that I wanted to come back, that I was searching for something, a feeling, a warmth. He paused. I thought I was writing to London, to my estate, to the life I had left. But I was writing to you. Valerian's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I did not know it then, but every word was for you. Isolde opened her eyes, looked at him, and Valerian saw it. Everything she felt, everything she had hidden for 3 years. Love, pure, patient, undemanding. The kind of love that had asked for nothing, expected nothing, simply existed. Quiet, constant, true. Isolde, he said. Do not, she whispered. Please, do not say anything you will regret. I will not. You are the vampire king. I am no one. You are everything. The words hung between them. Isolde stared at him, disbelief written across her face. Valerian took her hand, held it gently. For 3 years you waited. You said nothing. You asked for nothing. You simply loved. Quietly, patiently. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. That is the most precious thing anyone has ever given me. Isolde's breath shuddered. I do not know what I am doing, Valerian said honestly. I came home from the war empty, numb, feeling nothing. And then I saw you. And slowly, piece by piece, you brought me back. I did nothing, Isolde whispered. You did everything. Valerian held her hand against his chest, against his heart. You asked if I was all right. You sat with me in silence. You did not demand, did not perform. You were simply there. And that was everything. Isolde closed her eyes, more tears fell. What are you saying? She asked. Valerian knew what he should say, knew the proper thing, the cautious thing, but he was tired of caution, tired of emptiness. He wanted to feel, to live, to have something real. I am saying I see you, Valerian said. Finally, I see you, and I do not want to look away. Isolde opened her eyes. They looked at each other, in the garden, in the afternoon light, and something shifted, changed, became undeniable. But reality was not so simple. Over the next days, Valerian tried to navigate what this meant. He was the vampire king. There were expectations, responsibilities, eyes always watching. And Isolde was human. That fact sat heavy in his chest. He was immortal, would live for centuries, perhaps forever. She would age, grow old, die. 50 years if she was lucky. 60. A blink. Nothing. To a vampire. But to have her for 50 years and then lose her. To watch her age while he remained unchanged. To know that every day brought her closer to death while he stayed frozen in time. Could he bear that Valerian sat in his study one evening and tried to think it through logically? He could choose duty, could find a suitable vampire match, someone immortal, someone who could stand beside him for centuries. It was the practical choice, the smart choice. But even as he thought it, he knew he would not make it. Because 50 years with Isolde was worth more than 500 years with anyone else, even if it ended in loss, in pain, in watching her slip away. Even then, it was worth it. He went to see her again. 3 days later, found her in the same garden, reading. She looked up as he approached, smiled, small, uncertain. You came back. I will always come back, Valerian said. He sat beside her on the bench. They sat in silence for a while, comfortable, as it always was with her. Then Valerian spoke. I need to tell you something. Isolde set down her book, turned to face him. What is it? I am immortal, Valerian said. I will live for centuries, perhaps forever. But you, he paused, you are human. You will age. You will die. Isolde's face did not change, as if she had already thought of this. I know, she said quietly. 50 years together, maybe 60 if we are fortunate, and then you will be gone, and I will remain. I know, she said again. Does that not frighten you? Isolde looked at him, her eyes clear. Yes, she said honestly, it frightens me, but not for the reason you think. What do you mean? I am not afraid of dying while you live on, Isolde said. I am afraid that you will choose eternity over the short time we could have together. Valerian stared at her. You would choose 50 years, he asked, knowing that is all we would have. Yes, no hesitation. 50 years with you is worth more than a lifetime without you. Valerian felt something in his chest break open. This woman, this extraordinary woman. She knew exactly what she was choosing, knew the pain, the inevitable end, and she chose it anyway, chose him anyway. I do not deserve you, Valerian said quietly. Isolde smiled. Perhaps not, but I am choosing you regardless. Valerian took her face in his hands, gently, as if she were something precious, fragile. I am choosing you too, he said, for however long we have. I am choosing you. And he kissed her, soft, careful, tender. Isolde's hands came up to rest against his chest. Her fingers curled into his shirt. The kiss deepened, became something more, not desperate, not consuming, but real, true, full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Isolde's eyes were shining. What happens now? She whispered. Valerian rested his forehead against hers. Now, he said, now we face the world together. But facing the world was not simple. Vampire society had expectations, rules, traditions. The Vampire King did not marry humans, did not bind himself to someone mortal, did not choose a short life over an eternal one. It was not forbidden, but it was not done. Word spread quickly, as it always did in their world. The Vampire King was courting Isolde Winslow, the quiet one, the human one, the sister of his former fiancée. The gossip was immediate, relentless. Some were intrigued, romantic even. The king choosing love over duty, others were scandalized, disapproving. This was not how things were done, and some were calculating, seeing opportunity, weakness. Valerian heard the whispers, saw the looks. He did not care. For the first time in his long life, he did not care what society thought. He cared only about the girl who had waited 3 years in silence. But there were those who cared very much. Lord Theron Ravencroft was one of them. Celestine's husband, a vampire of old blood and older prejudices. He cornered Valerian at a council meeting 2 weeks later. Your Grace, a word. Valerian turned, looked at the man who had married Celestine. Tall, cold, calculating. Lord Ravencroft? I hear congratulations are in order. You and Miss Isolde Winslow. You heard correctly. Ravencroft smiled. It did not reach his eyes. A human, how unusual. Is there a point to this conversation? Only a word of caution. Ravencroft stepped closer, lowered his voice. The council will not look favorably on this match, a human queen. It sets a dangerous precedent. The council does not choose my queen. I do. Of course, but there are those who believe the Vampire King should set an example, should uphold tradition, should not, he paused, diminish himself with a mortal. Valerian's eyes went cold. You should choose your next words very carefully, Ravencroft. Ravencroft held up his hands. I mean no offense. I merely suggest that perhaps a more suitable match could be arranged, someone of appropriate standing, appropriate longevity. No, Your Grace, I have made my choice, and it is not yours to question. Valerian turned to walk away. Ravencroft's voice followed him. She will die, you know, in 50 years, 60 if she is lucky, and you will remain alone for eternity. Valerian stopped, turned back. 50 years with her, he said quietly, is worth more than 500 without her. And he walked away. That evening, Valerian went to the Winslow house, found Isolde in the library, reading as always. She looked up when he entered, smiled. Then her smile faded. What happened? Valerian crossed to her, sat beside her, took her hand. The council is not pleased. Isolde's face fell. Because of me. Because they are old and set in their ways, but that is not your concern. It is my concern if it causes you trouble. Valerian lifted her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. You are worth any trouble, he said. Isolde looked at him, searched his face. Are you certain, she asked quietly. Certain about this, about me, because if you have doubts, I have no doubts. You could have anyone, someone immortal, someone powerful, someone... I could have anyone, Valerian agreed, but I want you. Isolde's eyes filled with tears. Why, she whispered. Because you see me, not the king, not the title, not the power. You see me, and you ask if I am all right. He cupped her face, gentle. Because you waited 3 years, because you never demanded, never asked. You simply loved. Quietly, patiently, perfectly. A tear slid down her cheek. Because when I am with you, the hollow place inside me feels less empty. Because you make me want to live. Not just exist. Live. Valerian wiped away her tears with his thumbs. That is why. And that will always be why. Isolde closed her eyes, more tears fell. Then she opened her eyes and looked at him with such love, it took his breath away. I waited 3 years, she said. I will wait forever if I have to. You do not have to wait anymore, Valerian said. I am here, I am yours, for however long we have. and he kissed her again. In the library, in the lamplight, in the quiet house where she had waited for him. For 3 years, never saying a word. Until finally, he had heard her. The weeks that followed were not easy. Vampire society pushed back, subtly, in the way old money and older power always did. Invitations came less frequently to houses where the Winslows were expected. Whispers followed Isolde at every gathering. The council made their displeasure known through carefully worded suggestions and thinly veiled warnings. But Valerian stood firm, and slowly, very slowly, the tide began to turn. Because there were those in vampire society who were tired of the old ways, who saw opportunity in change. And because when people saw Valerian and Isolde together, they saw something undeniable. Love, real, true, unshakable. The kind that did not bow to pressure or tradition or expectation. The kind that simply was. 3 months after their first kiss in the garden, Valerian took Isolde to his estate for dinner. Private, just the two of them. They ate in a small dining room overlooking the city, London spread below them, lights twinkling in the darkness. After dinner, they moved to the drawing room, sat together on the sofa by the fire. Isolde rested her head against Valerian's shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her. They sat in comfortable silence, as they always did. Then Isolde spoke. "May I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever regret it, choosing me?" Valerian looked down at her. "Never." "Why would you ask that?" "Because I know what you gave up. What you faced because of you, the council's disapproval, society's judgment. I know it cannot be easy." Valerian was quiet for a moment. Then he shifted, turned to face her fully, took both her hands in his. "Isolde, look at me." She did. "When I returned from the war, I was empty, numb. I felt nothing. I wanted nothing. I existed, but I did not live." He paused. "Then I met you, really met you, and slowly you brought me back. Made me feel again. Made me want again." Valerian lifted her hands to his lips, kissed them. "You gave me back my life. How could I ever regret choosing you?" Isolde's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "I love you," she whispered. It was the first time she had said it out loud. Valerian's breath caught. "Say it again." "I love you." Valerian pulled her close, held her against his chest. "I love you too," he said into her hair. "I love you." And they stayed like that, wrapped in each other, in the firelight, in the quiet. Two people who had found each other against all odds. A vampire king and a human girl, immortal and mortal, power and quietness, and somehow impossibly perfectly matched. That night, after Isolde had gone home, Valerian stood at his window and looked out at London. He thought about the choice he had made, the path he had chosen. 50 years, maybe 60. That was all he would have with her, a blink in his endless life. But those years would be filled with her quiet strength, her patient love, her eyes looking at him and seeing him, really seeing him. And when those years ended, when he had to watch her age and fade and finally slip away, when he was alone again for the eternity that followed, he would have those memories, those precious, perfect years, and they would be worth it, worth every moment of pain that would come after. Because loving Isolde, being loved by Isolde, had brought him back to life, had filled the hollow place inside him, had given him a reason to exist beyond duty and tradition and expectation. She had given him love, real love, the kind that did not count years or measure time, the kind that simply was. And for that, for her, Valerian would face anything, the council's disapproval, society's judgment, the inevitable pain of loss, all of it, because she was worth it. She had always been worth it. He had just been too blind to see. But he saw her now, and he would never look away. The clock struck midnight. Valerian remained at the window. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more whispers, more pressure. But tomorrow would also bring her. And that was enough, more than enough. Valerian closed his eyes and smiled. For the first time in 3 years, it was real, genuine, full of something he had thought lost forever. Hope. The summons came on a gray morning, a formal letter, heavy parchment, the seal of the Vampire Council pressed into dark red wax. Valerian knew what it was before he opened it. He had been expecting this. The letter was brief, direct, as all council communications were. Your presence is required. Council chambers. 3 days hence. The matter of your intended union will be discussed. Discussed. Such a polite word for what they really meant. Challenged, questioned, opposed, Valerian set the letter down on his desk, looked out the window at the city below. 3 days. In 3 days, he would have to stand before the council and defend his choice. Defend Isolde. Not that she needed defending, but they would demand it anyway. They would say she was unsuitable, human, mortal, beneath him. They would pressure him to reconsider, to choose someone more appropriate, someone immortal, someone of proper standing. And Valerian would refuse. He had made his choice, and nothing the council said would change it. He went to see Isolde that afternoon, found her in the Winslow garden, reading, as always. She looked up as he approached, smiled, then her smile faded. "What is it?" Valerian sat beside her on the bench, took her hand. "The council has summoned me in 3 days. They want to discuss our engagement." Isolde's face went pale. "They are going to try to stop it." "Yes." "What will you do?" Valerian looked at her. "I will tell them the truth, that I have made my choice and it is you." Isolde's hand tightened in his. "They will not accept it easily." "I know. They may threaten you, your position, your—" "It does not matter." Valerian cupped her face. "Gentle. Nothing they say will change my mind." Isolde searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. She found none. "I am afraid," she whispered. "So am I." "But you are going anyway." "Yes, because you are worth fighting for." Isolde closed her eyes, leaned into his touch. "What if they make you choose between the crown and me?" Valerian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said simply, "I choose you." Isolde's eyes flew open. "Valerian, no, you cannot. I can and I will." He stroked her cheek with his thumb. "I have been king for 300 years. I have done my duty, fought my wars, sacrificed everything for the crown." He paused. "But I have never lived. Not truly. Not until you." Tears slipped down Isolde's cheeks. 50 years with you," Valerian said quietly, "is worth more than 300 years on a throne. You would give up everything for me. Everything, no hesitation, because you are not something I am adding to my life. You are my life now." Isolde threw her arms around him, buried her face in his chest, held him as if she would never let go. Valerian wrapped his arms around her, rested his chin on top of her head, and for a moment in that quiet garden, the world fell away. There was only this, the two of them, together, against whatever was coming. The 3 days passed too quickly. The morning of the council meeting arrived cold and gray. Rain threatened but did not fall. Valerian dressed carefully, not in his usual simple attire, but in the formal robes of the Vampire King. Dark, severe, meant to command respect. He needed every advantage. Marcus helped him with the heavy cloak, the ceremonial collar. "Your Grace," Marcus said quietly, "whatever happens today, know that many of us support you." Valerian looked at his attendant, loyal for over a century. "Thank you, Marcus. She is a good woman, the right woman." Valerian almost smiled. "Yes, she is." He left his estate at noon. The council chambers were in the old quarter, ancient stone buildings that had stood for 1,000 years. Valerian walked through the great doors, down the long hall. His footsteps echoed. He had walked this hall countless times, as a young vampire, as a soldier, as a king, but never like this, never to fight for something that was his. The council chamber doors opened before him. Inside, 12 vampires sat in a semicircle, the eldest and most powerful of their kind, the ones who made the laws, who held the traditions, who believed they controlled the future. Valerian stepped inside. The doors closed behind him with a heavy thud. He stood in the center of the chamber, alone, facing them all. Lord Marius the eldest spoke first, his voice like gravel, like centuries compressed into sound. "Valerian Ashcroft, Vampire King, you have been summoned to address a matter of great importance. I am here. It has come to our attention that you intend to marry a human, Isolde Winslow." "That is correct." Murmurs ran through the council, disapproving, shocked though they had known already. Lord Marius continued, "This is unprecedented." "Not unprecedented," Valerian said calmly. "Uncommon, perhaps, but not forbidden. The Vampire King has never taken a human bride. Then I will be the first." More murmurs, louder now. Lady Cordelia, a vampire of ancient lineage, leaned forward. "Your Grace, we understand that the war was difficult, that you returned changed. Perhaps you are not thinking clearly. Perhaps you need time to—" "I am thinking perfectly clearly. A human bride," Lady Cordelia continued as if he had not spoken, "will age, will die. In 50 years you will be alone. Is that truly what you want? Yes. The word fell like stone. Silence. Lord Theron Ravencroft sat to the left. He spoke now, voice smooth, calculating. Your Grace, if I may, there are other options, more suitable options. My own wife, Lady Celestine, was your fiancée before the war. The engagement could be reinstated. She could divorce me. It would be a simple matter to— No, and Valerian's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Ravencroft blinked, taken aback. Your Grace, I merely suggest that a match with Celestine would be more appropriate. She is of good family, connected, and she already knows you. Surely that would be preferable to— I said no. Valerian stepped forward, his voice rose, not shouting, but commanding, the voice of a king. I will say this once and only once. I am not marrying Celestine Ravencroft. I am not marrying anyone the council suggests. I am marrying Isolde Winslow. She is human, someone shouted from the back. She is mine, Valerian shouted back. The chamber erupted, voices overlapping, arguing, protesting. Lord Marius raised his hand. Silence fell. Your Grace, he said heavily, we understand that you have feelings for this woman. But feelings are not enough. The Vampire King must think of the future, of legacy, of what message this sends to our people. What message? Valerian asked quietly, dangerously, that humans are our equals. And are they not? Shocked silence. Lord Marius stared at him. Your Grace, you cannot be serious. I am completely serious. Valerian looked around the chamber, met each council member's eyes. For centuries we have held ourselves apart, superior, better. And what has it brought us? War, isolation, fear. He paused. Isolde Winslow is human. Yes, she will age and wane while I remain unchanged. Yes, but she has something none of you have, something I had forgotten existed. And what is that? Lady Cordelia asked coldly. Humanity. The word hung in the air. She sees people, not positions, not power, not immortality. She sees hearts, souls. When everyone else asked about glory, she asked if I was all right. When everyone else demanded words, she sat with me in silence. She waited 3 years without asking for anything in return. Valerian's voice grew softer, but more intense. That is love, real love, the kind that does not count years or measure worth by bloodlines, the kind that simply is. He straightened. I have been your king for 300 years. I have fought your wars, upheld your laws, sacrificed everything you asked of me, and I will continue to be your king. Pause. But I will not sacrifice her. I will not choose duty over the only real thing I have ever had. You would defy the council, Lord Marius asked. If the council asked me to choose between the crown and Isolde, Valerian said clearly, I choose Isolde. Gasps echoed through the chamber. You would give up the throne, Lady Cordelia's voice was shocked. In a heartbeat. Silence. Complete. Stunned. Then Lord Marius spoke, slowly, carefully. Your Grace, if you abdicate, there will be case. The succession is not clear. It could lead to— Then do not make me choose, Valerian said simply. Accept my decision, accept her, and I will remain your king. The council members looked at each other, uncertain, torn. They had not expected this, had not expected him to be willing to give up everything. For a human, for love. Lord Marius was about to speak when the chamber doors opened. Everyone turned. A figure stood in the doorway. Isolde. She walked into the chamber with her head held high. She wore a simple dress, dark blue, her hair pulled back, no jewelry, no adornment, just herself. She looked small in that vast space, fragile, human, but she did not waver. Valerian's heart clenched. Isolde, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, she said quietly, then louder to the council. Forgive the intrusion, but I could not let him face this alone. Lord Marius frowned. Miss Winslow, this is a council matter. You have no place. I have every place. Isolde's voice was steady, clear. Since I am the one being discussed. She walked to the center of the chamber, stood beside Valerian. He wanted to protect her, to send her away. This was his battle to fight. But looking at her face, he understood. This was her battle too. Lord Marius, Lady Cordelia, honored council members. Isolde addressed them with perfect courtesy. I know what you think of me, a human, a nobody, unsuitable for the Vampire King. No one contradicted her. And you are right, Isolde continued. I am human. I will age, I will die. I have no power, no influence, no immortality to offer. Pause. But I have loved him for 3 years, in silence, without asking for anything, without demanding anything. I loved him when he was engaged to my sister. I loved him when he left for war. I loved him when I thought he might never return. Her voice grew stronger. I loved him not because he was the vampire king, not because of his title or his power or his position. I loved him because of who he is, the man beneath the crown, the one who came back from war broken and lost, the one who sits in silence and finds peace, the one who sees me. Isolde looked around the chamber. You say I am not enough for him, but he has chosen me, not because he has to, not because of duty or tradition, but because he wants to. She turned to Valerian. Their eyes met, and I choose him, for however long we have, 50 years, 60. I will love him every day, and when I am gone, he will have the memory of someone who loved him not for what he was, but for who he is. Tears shone in her eyes but did not fall. That is all I can offer, but it is everything I have. The chamber was silent, completely silent. Then from the back a voice spoke. She is right. Everyone turned. Celestine walked into the chamber. Valerian stared. Celestine was... What? Celestine held up a hand. She looked different, stronger, more certain than he had ever seen her. She walked to stand beside Isolde, her sister, Lord Marius, Lady Cordelia, council members. Celestine's voice rang clear. I was Valerian's fiancée 3 years ago. I was supposed to marry him, build a life with him. Pause. But I did not love him, not truly. I loved what he represented. Power, status, security. She looked at Valerian. I am sorry, but it is the truth. Valerian nodded. He had known. Celestine turned to Isolde. But my sister, my quiet sister, she loved him. Truly, deeply. For 3 years she suffered in silence. She watched me plan a wedding to the man she loved, and she said nothing. Celestine's voice broke slightly. Because she is better than me, kinder than me, more selfless than me. She addressed the council again. I petitioned for divorce from Lord Ravencroft. Our marriage was a mistake, loveless, empty. Gasps, shocked murmurs, Celestine ignored them. And I stand here to support my sister. To tell you that Isolde Winslow is exactly what the Vampire King needs, what this council needs, what our society needs. She looked directly at Lord Marius, someone who loves without counting the cost, someone who gives without demanding return, someone who sees people, not positions. Celestine stepped back, stood beside Isolde, two sisters, together, for the first time in 3 years. Isolde looked at Celestine. Tears streamed down her face. Cel, she whispered. Celestine took her hand, squeezed it. I am sorry, Celestine said quietly, for not seeing you, for pretending not to know. I am so sorry. Isolde pulled her sister into an embrace. They held each other, crying, healing. 3 years of silence, of pain, of distance. Closing, Valerian watched them. Felt something in his chest warm. This was what love looked like. Not possession, not competition, but support, understanding, forgiveness. Lord Marius cleared his throat. The sisters separated, stood side by side facing the council. This is highly irregular, Lord Marius said. Love often is, Valerian replied. Lord Marius looked at him, at Isolde, at Celestine standing in support. Then he looked around at the other council members. Something passed between them, unspoken. Finally, Lord Marius spoke. Your Grace, the council cannot support this match. Valerian's jaw tightened. Beside him, Isolde went very still. However, Lord Marius continued, the council also cannot stop you. You are the Vampire King. The choice of your consort is ultimately yours. Pause. If you choose to marry Miss Isolde Winslow, the council will not interfere. Valerian stared. You are accepting it. We are not accepting it, Lady Cordelia said sharply. We are not interfering. There is a difference. A difference I will take, Valerian said. Lord Marius stood. The other council members followed. Your Grace, understand this. If you make this choice, there will be consequences. Society will talk. Some will disapprove. Your reign may be more difficult. I understand. And you accept this, I do. Lord Marius nodded slowly. Then we are finished here. He walked toward the door, paused, looked back. For what it is worth, Your Grace, I hope you are right. I hope she is worth it. Valerian looked at Isolde, at her tear-stained face, her eyes, her hand clutching her sister's. She is, he said simply. Lord Marius nodded once, then left. The other council members followed, one by one, until only Ravencroft remained. He stood in the shadows, staring at Celestine. You truly wish to divorce me? Yes. Over this, over them, over myself, Celestine said quietly. I should have done it long ago. Ravencroft's face twisted. You are making a mistake. The only mistake I made was marrying you. Ravencroft's eyes went cold. He looked at Valerian. This is not over, Your Grace. There will be repercussions. I promise you that. I am not afraid of you, Ravencroft. Perhaps you should be. Then he turned and swept from the chamber. The doors closed. Silence fell. Valerian, Isolde, and Celestine stood alone in the vast chamber. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Valerian turned to Celestine. Thank you, he said quietly, for what you did. You did not have to. Celestine smiled, sad but genuine. Yes, I did. She is my sister, and I have been a terrible sister for far too long. She looked at Isolde. Can you forgive me? Isolde nodded, fresh tears falling. There is nothing to forgive. You are here now. That is what matters. The sisters embraced again. Valerian watched them, felt that warmth in his chest grow. This was what he had chosen. Not just Isolde, but this. Family, love, humanity, the things that made life worth living. They left the council chambers together. Outside, rain had begun to fall, soft, gentle. Celestine's carriage waited. I should go, she said. There is much to arrange. The divorce, finding a new place to live. You can stay with us, Isolde said immediately. At the house, Mother and Father would want you to. Celestine smiled. Thank you. I may take you up on that. She looked at Valerian. Take care of her. Always. And Isolde. Celestine took her sister's hands. Be happy. You deserve it. You have always deserved it. So do you, Isolde said. Perhaps I will find it now. Celestine glanced back at the council building. Now that I am finally free. She climbed into her carriage, waved, then was gone. Valerian and Isolde stood in the rain. We should go, Valerian said. In a moment. Isolde tilted her face up. Let the rain fall on her skin. I cannot believe it happened, she whispered. I cannot believe they accepted it. Barely, Valerian said, and with conditions. This will not be easy. I know, Isolde looked at him, but we will face it together. Yes, together. Valerian pulled her close, kissed her in the rain, soft, gentle, full of promise. When they pulled apart, Isolde was smiling. What? Valerian asked. I was just thinking. 3 years ago, I stood in a window and watched you leave. I thought I would never have this. Never have you, but she touched his face. But I do. Against all odds. I do. Valerian covered her hand with his. You always did, he said. I was just too blind to see. They stood in the rain, holding each other. Two people who had found their way to each other through silence, impatience, and love. The Vampire King and the girl who waited. Together. Finally. The weeks that followed were not easy. News of the council meeting spread, as news always did. The Vampire King was marrying a human. The council had not stopped him. Society was divided. Some supported the match. Younger vampires mostly. Those tired of old traditions. Those who saw romance in the choice. Others opposed it. The old families, the conservatives, those who believed in blood purity and immortal matches. But Valerian did not care. He had made his choice, and he would not waver. Plans for the wedding began, simple, intimate, nothing grand or ostentatious. That was not who they were. Isolde wanted a quiet ceremony, family and close friends only. Valerian agreed. He had no desire for spectacle. But there was one matter that needed addressing. Lord Theron Ravencroft. Since the council meeting, Ravencroft had been unusually quiet. Too quiet. Valerian knew the man, knew he would not accept defeat gracefully. He was proven right 2 weeks before the wedding. Word reached Valerian through his network of informants. Ravencroft had been selling information during the Blood Wars. To both sides, playing them against each other for profit. He was the reason certain battles had been lost, certain soldiers killed. He was a traitor. Valerian brought the evidence to the council. They were shocked, horrified. Lord Marius called an emergency session. Ravencroft was summoned, confronted, the evidence presented. He denied it at first, blustered, accused, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, he broke, confessed everything. The council stripped him of his title, his lands, his position. He was exiled, banished from vampire society, sent away in disgrace. Celestine's divorce was granted immediately. She was free, and Valerian felt a weight lift from his shoulders. One more obstacle removed. One more threat eliminated. The path was clear. The wedding took place on a quiet evening in early autumn. No grand cathedral, no hundreds of guests, just a small chapel. Old stone, candlelight, intimate. Family and close friends gathered. Lord and Lady Winslow, Celestine, a few loyal council members, Marcus and the household staff, and in the front waiting at the altar Valerian. He wore simple black. No crown, no royal regalia, just himself. The doors opened, and Isolde walked in. Valerian's breath caught. She wore a simple white dress, no elaborate train, no jewels. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders. She carried a small bouquet of white roses. She was beautiful, not in the showy obvious way, but in the quiet perfect way that was purely her. She walked down the aisle alone, head held high, their eyes met, and Valerian felt everything else fall away. The council, society, the future, none of it mattered. There was only her. Isolde reached the altar, took his hands. They turned to face each other. The ceremony was brief, traditional, simple. Vows were exchanged. I, Valerian Ashcroft, take you, Isolde Winslow, to be my wife, my partner, my heart, for all the days we have together. I, Isolde Winslow, take you, Valerian Ashcroft, to be my husband, my partner, my heart, for all the days we have together. The priest blessed them. You may kiss your bride. Valerian cupped Isolde's face, gently, as if she were something precious, and kissed her, soft, tender, full of love. When they pulled apart, Isolde was crying, happy tears. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. They turned to face their guests. Applause filled the small chapel. Celestine was crying. Lord and Lady Winslow were crying. Even Marcus looked emotional. Valerian and Isolde walked back down the aisle together, husband and wife, vampire king and human queen. For however long they had, the reception was held at Valerian's estate, small, intimate, candlelight and music and laughter. Valerian danced with his wife, held her close. Are you happy? He asked. More than I ever thought possible, Isolde said. No regrets. None, Mom. They swayed together in the soft light, surrounded by people who loved them. Later, Celestine approached. May I speak with you both? They stepped aside, into a quiet corner. Celestine smiled, genuine, warm. I wanted to tell you something. I have met someone. Isolde's eyes widened. What? Who? A human, a doctor. He treated me after a small accident last month. We have been talking, spending time together. Celestine's face glowed. His name is Thomas. He is kind, gentle. He sees me. Not my title, not my family, just me. Valerian smiled. I am happy for you. As am I, Isolde said. You deserve happiness, Cel. We all do, Celestine said. She looked at them. And we all found it, in the most unexpected ways. She hugged them both, then returned to the reception. Valerian looked at Isolde. Everyone is finding their happy ending. Yes, Isolde said. They are, Mom. She leaned against him, content. What do we do now? She asked. Now, Valerian said. We live. They did. They lived. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. Valerian and Isolde built a life together. Quiet, simple, perfect. Mornings spent reading together, afternoons walking through the city, evenings by the fire. Valerian learned what it meant to truly live, not just exist, to find joy in small moments, in her laughter, in her smile, in the way she took his hand. Society eventually accepted the match. The scandal faded. Younger vampires began choosing human partners. Change came. Slowly, but it came. Valerian remained vampire king. But he ruled differently, with more compassion, more humanity, because Isolde had taught him what it meant to truly see people. And the years passed. 1, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. 50 years after their wedding, Valerian stood at the window of their home. The same window he had stood at when he first returned from the war. But everything was different now. He heard footsteps behind him. Slow, careful. He turned. Isolde walked toward him. She was 74 now. Her dark hair had turned silver, her face lined with age. She moved carefully, her body no longer young, But her eyes, those clear, seeing eyes, they had not changed. "There you are," she said, her voice softer now, but still hers. "Here I am." Isolde came to stand beside him. He took her hand, gently. It was fragile now, thin, but it was still her hand. They looked out at the city together. "What are you thinking about?" Isolde asked. "You." "What about me?" Valerian looked at her. At this woman who had changed everything. "I am thinking about the window," he said, 50 years ago when you stood there and watched me leave. I remember. I was blind then. I did not see you. You see me now." "Yes, and I have seen you every day since." Isolde smiled. The lines around her eyes deepened. "I have aged," she said quietly, "while you have not." "You are beautiful," Valerian said, and meant it. Every line on her face was a year they had spent together, every gray hair a memory, every wrinkle a smile shared. She was more beautiful to him now than she had ever been. "I am dying," Isolde said. "Not sad, just stating fact. The doctors say, perhaps 6 months, perhaps a year." Valerian's chest tightened. He had known, had felt it coming, but hearing her say it made it real. "I know," he whispered. "Are you ready?" "No, I will never be ready." Isolde turned to face him, took both his hands in hers. "Valerian, these 50 years, they have been everything. Everything I dreamed, everything I hoped." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I do not regret a single day, not one, even knowing how it ends." Valerian pulled her close, held her carefully. She was so fragile now. "I waited 300 years to find you," he said. 300 years of existing, not living. And then you asked if I was all right, and everything changed." He pulled back, looked into her eyes. 50 years with you has been worth 300 years without you, worth every year I will have to live after." "You will live on," Isolde said, "for centuries more. I will love you," Valerian interrupted. "Only you, always you, for the rest of eternity." Isolde closed her eyes. More tears fell. "I wish I could stay. I wish you could too, but I am grateful for what we had." They stood together at the window, holding each other. The sun was setting, painting the sky in golden rose. "It is beautiful," Isolde whispered. "Yes, you are." She smiled, looked up at him. "Kiss me." Valerian kissed her, gentle, tender, as if she might break. And in that kiss was everything. 50 years, a lifetime, all the love they had shared. When they pulled apart, Isolde was smiling. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Always." They stood at the window together, watching the sun set over London, together, for however long they had left. Isolde died on a quiet spring morning 3 months later. In their bed, in Valerian's arms, she simply closed her eyes and did not open them again. Valerian held her, for a long time. He did not cry. Vampires rarely did, but something inside him broke. The hollow place that she had filled. It was empty again, but not the same empty as before, because he had known love, real love, and that changed everything. The funeral was simple, as she would have wanted. They buried Isolde in a quiet cemetery, under a tree, with a simple headstone. Isolde Ashcroft, beloved wife. She waited in silence, and was finally seen. Valerian stood at her grave after everyone had gone. The sun set, the stars came out, still he stood. "I waited 300 years to find you," he said to the headstone. "I will wait 300 more to forget you." Pause. "I never will." Years passed, decades, centuries. Valerian remained vampire king. Ruled well, ruled justly. But he never remarried, never took another consort. He had made his choice, and even in death, Isolde was still his choice. He visited her grave every year. On their anniversary, brought white roses, the flowers she had carried at their wedding, and stood in silence, remembering. A quiet voice asking, "Are you all right?" Hands folded in a lap. A girl reading in a library. Comfortable silence. Patient love. 3 years of waiting. 50 years of living. All of it precious. All of it worth it. The world changed around him. Vampire society evolved. Humans and vampires live together now. The barriers falling. All because one vampire king had chosen love over tradition. Had chosen a human girl who waited in silence. And proved that some things were worth more than eternity. Love. Real love. The kind that did not count years or measure time. The kind that simply was. 200 years after Isolde's death, Valerian stood at the window of his estate. The same window where this had all begun, where he had returned from war, empty, numb, where he had stood and wondered if he would ever feel again. He looked out at London, so different now, changed, evolved. But some things remained the same. Love, loss, memory. He closed his eyes and saw her face as clearly as if she stood before him. Clear eyes, a quiet smile. "Are you all right?" Valerian opened his eyes and whispered into the darkness. "I am all right, because you were here. For 50 years, you were here, and that was everything." He stood at the window, alone, immortal, eternal, but not empty, never empty again, because he had loved and been loved by a girl who waited 3 years in silence, who never said a word, until finally, he had heard her and seen her and chosen her, and those 50 years together had been worth an eternity alone. Far away in a quiet cemetery under a tree, white roses grew wild around a simple headstone every year, without fail, as if someone still cared, still remembered, still loved, and always would for eternity.